Stephen A., I could actually argue that it hurts the game more if they had given her a roster spot over someone more deserving.
So go ahead and argue.
That's exactly what I'm saying, because I think it makes a mockery of the women's game. If the focus on, now we just have to have people because of marketing and their attention, and they're not as talented, and we're not putting the best team out there.
2 minutes ago, sports media exploded after Stephen A. Smith went completely nuclear on Molly Qerim live on air, and viewers say it was one of the most uncomfortable moments in recent ESPN history. What started as a heated debate about Caitlin Clark suddenly turned into a brutal, no-holds-barred takedown that left the studio silent and social media in absolute chaos. Fans watching at home couldn't believe what they were seeing, as Stephen A. didn't just disagree. He dismantled Molly's argument piece by piece, calling out what he saw as blatant bias and narrative.
A rookie, ladies and gentlemen. Put this in perspective. Caitlin Clark finished the regular season leading rookies in scoring, field goals made, three-point field goals made, assists, steals, and minutes played, and she led the league in assists and three-pointers made. Think about that for a second, and like Shannon says, ultimately, you first team, you one of those people. So we got
in real time. The moment instantly went viral. Clips began circulating within minutes, with viewers replaying Stephen A.'s sharp tone, his unfiltered frustration, and Molly's stunned reaction as the energy in the room shifted dramatically. People online are saying this wasn't just a debate, it was a line being crossed. For months, Caitlin Clark discussions have dominated headlines, dividing fans, players, and analysts alike. But nobody expected Stephen A. to unleash this level of intensity directly at one of
the reason why in the public eye, Ali was the greatest was because of the adversity. It's not to compare one to the other, because I'm not trying to do that. I'm simply pointing out that what goes on outside the court, the field, the ring of play per se, matters, because your mental becomes incredibly important.
ESPN's most recognizable hosts. What made the moment even more shocking was the timing. Live television. No edits. No safety net. Stephen A. appeared fed up, accusing the conversation of ignoring facts, inflaming controversy, and disrespecting the broader landscape of women's basketball. Molly attempted to push back, but the momentum was gone. The power dynamic flipped instantly, and viewers could feel the tension through the screen. Now the internet is split straight down the middle. Some fans are applauding Stephen A. for saying what everyone was thinking, claiming he finally exposed what they see as unfair coverage around Caitlin Clark. Others believe he...
Nevertheless, for a Team USA's game, rife with stars, expected to blow out their competition, they drew the worst crowd. Lowest attendance of the Olympics.
He went too far, calling the moment disrespectful and unnecessary, especially given the platform and the person involved. ESPN insiders are reportedly scrambling, while fans are asking the same question over and over again. Has this just permanently changed Molly Qerim's role on the show? One thing is undeniable, this wasn't just another sports debate. This was a viral media moment that could reshape on-air dynamics, spark internal fallout, and ignite an even bigger war over how Caitlin Clark is discussed in sports media. And as the clips continue to rack up millions of views, the fallout is only just beginning. The tension didn't come out of nowhere. For weeks leading up to that live moment, the Caitlin Clark debate had been simmering beneath the surface, especially on major sports panels where opinions were starting to feel less like analysis and more like personal positions. Every show, every segment, seemed to circle back to Clark. Her talent, her coverage, her popularity, and what it meant for women's basketball as a whole. Viewers were already fatigued, and the analysts themselves were clearly feeling the pressure of saying the right thing in an increasingly polarized conversation. When the cameras went live that day, the setup felt routine. Same desk, same format, same expectation of a heated but controlled debate. Molly Qerim opened the segment confidently, framing the discussion around Caitlin Clark's influence and the attention she's receiving across the sports world. On the surface, it sounded like business as usual, but something about the framing immediately set Stephen A. Smith off. His body language changed, his tone sharpened, and before anyone could redirect the conversation, he leaned in. Stephen A. didn't start by yelling. That's what made it more unsettling. He began calmly, breaking down why he believed the conversation had become distorted. He argued that Clark's talent was undeniable, but that the way the media was handling her narrative was creating unnecessary division. As he spoke, it became clear this wasn't just about one player. It was about what he saw as selective outrage, inconsistent standards, and media narratives being pushed without accountability. Molly tried to counter, pointing out Clark's numbers, her impact on ratings, and the undeniable buzz she brings to the sport. But Stephen A. wasn't having it. His voice rose slightly, not in anger, but in conviction. He accused the discussion of ignoring context and using Clark as a symbol rather than treating her as an athlete among many deserving of recognition. The exchange quickly stopped sounding like a debate and started feeling like a confrontation. What shocked viewers most was how direct Stephen A. became. On live television, he openly criticized the way the conversation was being steered, implying that the framing itself was part of the problem. The studio went quiet. Other panelists noticeably leaned back, avoiding eye contact, letting the moment play out. Molly attempted to regain control of the segment, but the rhythm was gone. The audience could feel that something irreversible had happened. Within minutes, social media lit up. Clips were clipped, reposted, and dissected in real time. Some fans praised Stephen A. for what they called finally speaking truth to power, while others accused him of disrespecting a colleague on air. Hashtags began trending, reaction videos popped up instantly, and former athletes chimed in with their takes. The moment had officially escaped the studio and taken on a life of its own. Behind the scenes, speculation exploded. Viewers began questioning whether this was spontaneous or something that had been building for a long time. People who follow sports media closely pointed out that Stephen A. had been visibly frustrated in recent weeks, often pushing back harder than usual when Caitlin Clark came up. This wasn't an outburst. It looked like a breaking point. The Caitlin Clark conversation itself became secondary to the optics of the moment. Was Stephen A. wrong for calling it out live? Was Molly unfairly targeted, or was she simply representing a broader media narrative? ESPN fans began debating power dynamics, gender dynamics, and whether internal disagreements should ever play out so publicly. By the time the segment ended, the energy was completely different. There were no jokes, no smooth transitions, no light banter. The show moved on, but viewers didn't. The silence in that studio lingered long after the cameras cut, and everyone watching knew this wasn't going to blow over quietly. This was the kind of moment that reshapes on-air relationships, forces internal conversations, and leaves permanent digital receipts. And as the internet continued to replay every second of that exchange, one question kept coming up. Was this just the beginning of a much bigger fallout, or had Stephen A. already crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed? As the dust settled from that explosive live exchange, the real damage didn't happen on television. It happened online and behind closed doors. Within an hour, the clip had already racked up millions of views across X, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Reaction videos flooded timelines, each one zooming in on Stephen A.'s tone, Molly's facial expression, and the awkward stillness that followed. Sports fans weren't just reacting to what was said, they were reacting to how it was said, and who it was said to. What stood out immediately was how divided the response became. One side argued Stephen A. had finally voiced a frustration many analysts secretly feel, that the Caitlin Clark conversation has become emotionally charged, selectively framed, and weaponized depending on who's talking. They praised him for refusing to play along and for calling out what they viewed as forced narratives. To them, this wasn't disrespect, it was honesty breaking through a polished TV format. The other side saw it very differently. Critics accused Stephen A. of overpowering the conversation, embarrassing a colleague, and turning a sports debate into a personal confrontation. They argued that regardless of his points, live television wasn't the place to unload months of frustration. For them, the issue wasn't Caitlin Clark, it was professionalism. And in that framing, Molly became a symbol of someone caught in the crossfire. Inside ESPN circles, speculation went into overdrive. Former hosts, media insiders, and retired athletes hinted that this moment wasn't as spontaneous as it looked. Tension, they suggested, had been brewing for a while. The Caitlin Clark topic had become a ratings juggernaut, and with that came pressure. Pressure to lean into controversy, pressure to choose sides, pressure to keep the audience engaged at all costs. In that environment, disagreement stops being intellectual and starts becoming personal. What made the moment so powerful was the power imbalance. Stephen A. Smith isn't just another panelist, he's one of the most influential voices in sports media. His words carry weight internally and externally. When he speaks forcefully, it changes the temperature of the room. That reality caused many viewers to re-watch the clip with fresh eyes, asking whether Molly ever truly had a chance to regain control once he went in. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark herself remained silent, which only added fuel to the fire. Her absence from the conversation allowed everyone else to project their own narratives onto her name. For some, she became proof of media favoritism. For others, she remained an elite athlete unfairly dragged into a larger culture war. The irony was hard to miss. The debate about coverage had completely overshadowed the player at the center of it. As hours turned into a full day, the conversation expanded beyond sports. Media critics began discussing on-air decorum, gender dynamics in debate shows, and whether strong personalities are rewarded for behavior that others would be punished for. Some pointed out that similar moments in the past ended very differently depending on who raised their voice and who was on the receiving end. That comparison made the situation even more volatile. Behind the scenes, fans noticed subtle changes. Subsequent segments felt more cautious. Body language was tighter. Conversations were shorter, safer, and more scripted. Whether intentional or not, the spontaneity that once defined the show seemed temporarily replaced by restraint. Viewers could sense it, and many called it out. The most damaging aspect wasn't the argument itself. It was the lingering question of trust. On-air chemistry relies on the belief that disagreements won't turn personal in real time. Once that line feels crossed, every future debate carries tension. Fans began wondering if Molly would respond directly, if Stephen A. would double down, or if the network would quietly steer the conversation away from the topic altogether. By the end of the week, it was clear this wasn't a one-day viral moment. It had become a case study in modern sports media, how fast narratives spiral, how personalities collide under pressure, and how one unscripted moment can expose cracks that were already there. The cameras may have moved on, but the consequences were still unfolding, and everyone involved knew the next time they sat at that desk, nothing would feel quite the same. By the third day, the conversation had fully transformed from a single on-air clash into a broader referendum on sports media itself. The original clip was no longer the focus. Now it was the reactions to the reactions that dominated timelines. Every podcast, live stream, and debate show seemed to have an opinion on what Stephen A. did, what Molly represented, and what the Caitlin Clark conversation had become. The moment had grown legs, and it wasn't slowing down. One of the biggest shifts was how former ESPN personalities began weighing in without directly naming names. They spoke in careful language, but the message was clear. Live television thrives on tension, yet there's an unspoken code about how far that tension should go. Several insiders hinted that moments like this are the result of unresolved disagreements being buried under professionalism until they eventually explode. To many viewers, that explanation made the clash feel inevitable rather than shocking. Stephen A. Smith, notably, didn't issue an apology. Instead, his next appearances were measured but firm. He reiterated his position without backing down, framing the situation as a necessary correction rather than a personal attack. To his supporters, this confirmed his authenticity. To his critics, it looked like deflection. But either way, it reinforced one thing. He wasn't going to let the narrative paint him as someone who simply lost control. Molly Qerim, on the other hand, became the subject of intense speculation. Her silence was read in multiple ways. Some saw it as professionalism, refusing to fan the flames. Others interpreted it as pressure, suggesting she was being advised to let the storm pass rather than engage. Every facial expression, every tone shift in subsequent broadcasts was analyzed frame by frame, as if viewers were searching for signs of tension beneath the surface. What complicated everything further was how Caitlin Clark continued to dominate headlines for reasons completely unrelated to the debate. Her performances on the court reminded everyone why she was being talked about in the first place. Yet even her achievements were now filtered through the lens of that argument. Analysts seemed hesitant, choosing their words carefully, as if afraid of reigniting another firestorm. The discourse had become fragile. Meanwhile, social media algorithms kept feeding the controversy. Old clips of Stephen A. debating other co-hosts resurfaced. Past moments where Molly moderated heated exchanges were reposted to compare how different confrontations were handled. People weren't just reacting, they were building narratives, connecting dots, and constructing theories about favoritism, double standards, and internal politics. The debate also exposed how emotionally invested fans had become. This wasn't just about sports anymore, it was about identity, fairness, and who gets to control the story. Some fans felt represented by Stephen A.'s bluntness, viewing it as resistance against manufactured narratives. Others felt alienated, believing the moment reinforced power imbalances that already exist in media spaces. That emotional split made any resolution nearly impossible. Behind the scenes, industry watchers suggested this moment would change how debates are structured going forward. Producers, they claimed, would become more hands-on. Segments would be more tightly timed. Language would be more carefully pre-approved. Ironically, in trying to avoid another viral meltdown, shows might end up losing the raw. As days passed, one truth became undeniable. No one involved could fully control how this story ended. The internet had taken ownership of it. Memes, edits, and satirical reenactments ensured the moment would live on far beyond its original context. Even viewers who didn't regularly watch the show now knew exactly who said what and how it sounded. In the end, part 3 of this saga wasn't about escalation, it was about consequence. The shock had faded, but the implications were settling in. Trust, perception, and credibility were all quietly being renegotiated in real time. And while the cameras kept rolling, the unspoken tension suggested that whatever came next, whether reconciliation or further fracture, would carry the weight of everything that had already happened. By the 4th phase of the fallout, something subtle but important began to happen. The outrage started cooling, and reflection took its place. The viral shock had peaked, the hot takes had been exhausted, and now viewers were rewatching the exchange with a calmer lens. What once felt explosive now looked more complicated. People weren't just asking who was right or wrong anymore, they were asking why the moment resonated so deeply in the first place. Media analysts began reframing the situation as a pressure cooker moment rather than a personal attack. They pointed out how live television rewards intensity, emotion, and confrontation, often pushing personalities toward extremes. Stephen A. Smith, known for his passion and volume, operates in an environment that constantly asks him to turn it up. In that context, his on-air eruption wasn't an anomaly, it was the system working exactly as designed. That realization sparked a new wave of discussion about Molly Qerim's role. As a moderator, she's expected to guide conversations without becoming the story. Yet in this case, the story crashed directly into her seat. Many viewers began expressing sympathy, arguing that she was doing her job in a format that leaves little room for nuance once a dominant voice decides to take over. Suddenly, the narrative shifted from blame to structural imbalance. Stephen A.'s supporters, meanwhile, doubled down, but in a different way. Instead of celebrating the confrontation, they emphasized the substance of his argument. They argued that the Caitlin Clark debate had indeed crossed from analysis into agenda, and that uncomfortable moments are sometimes necessary to reset the conversation. To them, the backlash proved his point, that honest criticism is often punished when it disrupts popular narratives. ESPN's response, or lack of one, became part of the story. The network didn't release a statement, didn't address the moment directly, and didn't discipline anyone publicly. That silence spoke volumes. Some interpreted it as quiet support for Stephen A.'s star power. Others saw it as a strategic move to avoid amplifying the controversy. Either way, it confirmed that this wasn't being treated as a minor slip, it was being handled carefully. Inside the show, viewers noticed micro-changes. The energy was calmer. Interruptions were fewer. Debates felt more segmented, more controlled. While the chemistry remained professional, the edge was dulled. Fans who loved the chaos missed it. Fans who hated the confrontation felt relieved. The audience itself had split, and the show seemed to be trying to walk a tightrope between both camps. The Caitlin Clark conversation also evolved. Analysts broadened their framing, highlighting multiple players and perspectives rather than centering every discussion on one figure. Whether intentional or not, it felt like a course correction. The controversy had forced a pause, a moment where producers and hosts reassessed how stories were being told and who they were being told for. What made this stage fascinating was how quiet it felt compared to the explosion that started it all. No shouting, no trending hashtags, just a slow recalibration. And in that silence, the true impact of the moment became clearer. Careers weren't ended, jobs weren't lost, but boundaries had been tested, and the industry took notes. The incident had become a reference point. Anytime debates grew heated, fans referenced that moment. Anytime Caitlin Clark was mentioned, there was extra caution. The ghost of that exchange lingered, not as a scandal, but as a reminder of how quickly control can slip away on live TV. By now, it was clear this wasn't about one argument or one show. It was about the evolving nature of sports media in an era where every second is clipped, shared, and judged. Authenticity and restraint were colliding, and no one had a perfect answer. But one thing was certain, after that day, everyone involved, and everyone watching, understood just how fragile the line between debate and breakdown really is. By the 4th phase of the fallout, something subtle but important began to happen. The outrage started cooling, and reflection took its place. The viral shock had peaked, the hot takes had been exhausted, and now viewers were re-watching the exchange with a calmer lens. What once felt explosive now looked more complicated. People weren't just asking who was right or wrong anymore, they were asking why the moment resonated so deeply in the first place. Media analysts began reframing the situation as a pressure cooker moment rather than a personal attack. They pointed out how live television rewards intensity, emotion, and confrontation, often pushing personalities toward extremes. Stephen A. Smith, known for his passion and volume, operates in an environment that constantly asks him to turn it up. In that context, his on-air eruption wasn't an anomaly, it was the system working exactly as designed. That realization sparked a new wave of discussion about Molly Qerim's role. As a moderator, she's expected to guide conversations without becoming the story. Yet in this case, the story crashed directly into her seat. Many viewers began expressing sympathy, arguing that she was doing her job in a format that leaves little room for nuance once a dominant voice decides to take over. Suddenly, the narrative shifted from blame to structural imbalance. Stephen A.'s supporters, meanwhile, doubled down, but in a different way. Instead of celebrating the confrontation, they emphasized the substance of his argument. They argued that the Caitlin Clark debate had indeed crossed from analysis into agenda, and that uncomfortable moments are sometimes necessary to reset the conversation. To them, the backlash proved his point, that honest criticism is often punished when it disrupts popular narratives. ESPN's response, or lack of one, became part of the story. The network didn't release a statement, didn't address the moment directly, and didn't discipline anyone publicly. That silence spoke volumes. Some interpreted it as quiet support for Stephen A.'s star power. Others saw it as a strategic move to avoid amplifying the controversy. Either way, it confirmed that this wasn't being treated as a minor slip, it was being handled carefully. The Caitlin Clark conversation also evolved. Analysts broadened their framing, highlighting multiple players and perspectives rather than centering every discussion on one figure. Whether intentional or not, it felt like a course correction. The controversy had forced a pause, a moment where producers and hosts reassessed how stories were being told and who they were being told for. What made this stage fascinating was how quiet it felt compared to the explosion that started it all. No shouting, no trending hashtags, just a slow recalibration. And in that silence, the true impact of the moment became clearer. Careers weren't ended, jobs weren't lost, but boundaries had been tested, and the industry took notes. The incident had become a reference point. Anytime debates grew heated, fans referenced that moment. Anytime Caitlin Clark was mentioned, there was extra caution. The ghost of that exchange lingered, not as a scandal, but as a reminder of how quickly control can slip away on live TV. By now, it was clear this wasn't about one argument or one show. It was about the evolving nature of sports media in an era where every second is clipped, shared, and judged. Authenticity and restraint were colliding, and no one had a perfect answer. But one thing was certain. After that day, everyone involved, and everyone watching, understood just how fragile the line between debate and breakdown really is. By the time the story reached its final phase, the moment had stopped being about Stephen A. Smith or Molly Qerim altogether. It had become a symbol, one of those rare flashpoints that reveals more about an industry than any carefully scripted segment ever could. What lingered wasn't outrage, but a quiet understanding that something fundamental had shifted in how sports media conversations are perceived and consumed. Fans who initially took sides began softening their stances. Rewatching the clip without the heat of the moment, many admitted the truth sat somewhere in the middle. Stephen A.'s frustration wasn't fabricated, but the delivery carried consequences. Molly wasn't pushing an agenda, but she was operating inside a system that rewards simplified narratives. In hindsight, the exchange felt less like a clash of personalities and more like a collision of roles under pressure. What became increasingly clear was how fragile live television truly is. One unscripted moment can override months of planning, branding, and audience trust. Producers may attempt to control the narrative, but once something goes viral, control is gone. Viewers don't just watch anymore. They dissect, remix, judge, and archive everything. That reality has permanently altered how on-air talent approaches conflict, knowing any slip could define them longer than years of consistent work. For Stephen A. Smith, the moment solidified his reputation rather than damaging it. He emerged as exactly who people already believed he was: passionate, uncompromising, and unafraid of backlash. For his supporters, this was validation. For his critics, it confirmed long-held concerns. Either way, he remained central to the conversation, which in modern media often equals survival. Molly Qerim's position, however, highlighted a quieter truth. Moderators are expected to absorb tension without becoming reactive, to hold the show together even when dynamics tilt against them. In this case, her restraint spoke louder than any rebuttal could have. Over time, that composure earned her a different kind of respect, one rooted in professionalism rather than dominance. Caitlin Clark, ironically, benefited the least and the most. She became the spark for a debate she never asked to represent, yet the controversy forced deeper conversations about how athletes are covered, framed, and compared. In the long run, that scrutiny may lead to more balanced coverage, not just for her, but for the entire sport. The lasting impact of this moment isn't measured in ratings or clicks, but in caution. Analysts now choose words more carefully. Producers intervene sooner. Conversations that once thrived on chaos now flirt with restraint. Some fans miss the rawness. Others appreciate the maturity. Either way, the tone has shifted. In the end, this wasn't a career-ending blow-up or a triumphant takedown. It was a mirror held up to sports media, exposing its incentives, its pressures, and its contradictions. The silence that followed spoke louder than the argument itself. And long after the clip fades from trending lists, the lesson remains. Live television doesn't forgive easily, and every voice carries weight, whether it intends to or not. This moment didn't just spark a debate, it exposed the reality of sports media in real time. And now we want to hear from you. Was Stephen A. Smith justified in calling out what he saw as a flawed narrative, or did he cross a line by doing it live on air? And where do you stand on how Caitlin Clark is being covered across sports media today? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments and join the conversation that everyone is still talking about. If this breakdown gave you a new perspective, hit that like button, it really helps the channel grow. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future deep dives into the biggest sports controversies, media meltdowns, and viral moments. We cover the stories behind the headlines and the truth behind the clips, so stay locked in, because the next shocking moment could happen live at any time.